Right then, I'll tell it straight, though I'd rather forget half of it. I was out on the promenade that morning, tightening the bolts on a bent railing some lad had bounced off the night before. Wind coming off the channel carried that sour reek of seaweed and diesel, nothing unusual for our coast. The tide was lazy, slapping half-heartedly at the stones below. Ordinary morning, ordinary job. I liked it that way. Ellie drifted up behind me like she always did, half-hunched in that hoodie 2 sizes too big. 15 or 16, depending on what day you asked her. Sharp eyes, mind you. Never missed a thing. "You hear it last night?" she asked. "Hear what?" I grunted, keeping the wrench moving. "The knocks, coming from under the pier." I snorted. "Kids mucking about, bloody typical for holiday week." She kicked at the boards with her trainer. Didn't sound like kids. I didn't want to encourage her, but she'd planted the thought now. Once I tightened the last bolt, I stood and spotted a few small scuffed footprints clearly from local kids leading toward the closed-off section of the pier, the one Fairburn kept under padlock. Light soles, unmistakable teenage style. That alone made sense. Still, the prints were odd, narrower than most, subtle. I paused, leaning on the wrench, thinking how easy it would be to dismiss something too quickly. Work to do. Fairburn found me before I even made it to my van. That man had a way of appearing silently despite the arthritic shuffle. "Got something for you," he said, voice low. "Electrical issue. In the locked section." My stomach dipped. "Thought you handled that yourself." He rubbed his jaw, eyes skittering away. "Not this time. Something's off." There was a tension in him I wasn't used to, and I'd known him 30 years. He never talked about the pier's history. Never. That avoidance made the concern in his eyes sharper now, and I noticed his knuckles white as he clenched them. I owed him, that was the problem. Years back, he'd loaned me money when I was between contracts and too proud to ask family. Debt like that sticks. "All right," I sighed. "I'll take a look." His relief was almost embarrassing. Inside the locked section, the boards groaned differently, dry rot in some, softened damp in others. Tar smell clung thickly, and the air held a faint vibration, as if the whole place were breathing too slowly. I flicked on my torch and followed the dusty path to the junction box. Halfway there, I froze. Something shifted in the dark behind a support beam. A soft drag, like a foot pulling across wood. "Fairburn?" I called. Nothing. I reached the junction box. Someone had left the maintenance log folded on top. Fairburn, presumably. His handwriting was unmistakable. I skimmed the entries. midnight. 3 knocks again, same spacing. Then lower. Child's voice heard near hatch. No child found. My skin prickled. I remembered Ellie's question. 3 knocks. As I ran my hand along the beam, I could have almost sworn I felt those same 3 faint vibrations through the wood. I shut the box, checked wiring, nothing unusual, and made my way out faster than I'd admit. When I stepped onto the open deck, Ellie was waiting, arms folded. "You called my name earlier," she said. "No, I didn't," I said firmly, keeping the focus on concern rather than fear. She frowned, and there it was again, the way her eyes searched the slats beneath us. "I heard you," she whispered. "Sounded just like you." A cold draft lifted the hairs on my neck. The smell of wet rope drifted up from below, sour and old. "Go home," I told her, "and keep away from this section." She didn't argue. That alone unsettled me. The next day, the weather turned. Clouds stacked heavy over the water, black on black. I found myself back near the locked section, unable to shake the feeling that something was shifting under us. I heard it then. 3 sharp taps, spaced evenly. Tap, tap, tap. They came from the far end, near the beams where the underside dipped lowest. "Not today," I muttered, pausing to steady my breath. Curiosity is a bloody curse. Behind a stack of old fishing nets, I found a hatch I'd never noticed. Rust crusted the edges. Air seeped from the cracks, cold enough to taste metallic on my tongue. I crouched, listening. I ran my fingers lightly along the wet planks and felt the vibrations of the 3-beat pattern once more. Tap, tap, tap. 3 beats, always 3. I opened the hatch. A crawl space yawned beneath, little more than a coffin of planks leading into blackness. A draught brushed my face, carrying the stench of tar. Something shifted deeper inside. That was enough for me. I slammed it shut, but I knew I'd be back. Storm rolled in proper that night. Wind roared along the shoreline, and the surge pounded the pier supports like fists. Fairburn rang me, voice thin with fear. "Something's moving in there," he said. "Won't stop knocking. I think it's trying to get up." I didn't want to go. Every instinct told me to stay home, crack open a beer and ignore him. But debt is debt. So I pulled on my coat and trudged through the rain. The pier shuddered under the storm. Spray lashed the boards, stinging cold. The locked door hung open, one hinge torn, nearly loose. Inside, the tapping was frantic. Tap, tap, tap. Then a pause, then softly. "Fairburn." My own voice. I swallowed hard and forced myself toward the hatch. The storm rattled the whole structure. If part of it collapsed, anyone inside could drown. My motivation felt solid. Duty to Fairburn, duty to Ellie, professional pride. I flipped the hatch open. Darkness breathed out, wet and cold. "Right then," I muttered. "In and out." I crawled forward, boards tight around my shoulders. The smell of wet rope thickened and the metallic taste grew sharper. Behind me, something mimicked my breaths. Close, too close. I froze. The thing tapped again. Tap, tap, tap. Then it whispered in Ellie's voice this time. "Come closer." I pressed my forehead to the boards, breathing through my teeth. The crawl space tilted then, boards quaking as a wave slammed the pier supports. Water sprayed up through the seams, cold as knives. I had to move. Think. Orientation. Thematic memory flickered. Neglect has consequences. I'd worked on this pier when I was younger, knew its bones. There was an old hatch toward the north corner leading out to the rocks. I shifted left, dragging myself through narrowing timber. Something skittered behind me, light-footed, fast, too fast. I didn't look back. The tapping started again, right by my feet. Tap, tap, tap. I pushed forward, lungs burning. The metallic taste got stronger, the air thinning as the crawl space dipped lower. A beam snapped somewhere to my right. Water surged in, splashing my cheek. Then my hand hit metal. The old hatch. I yanked the lever, stiff, unmoved in years, but it gave with a shriek. Light burst through a crack as the storm wind punched in. Behind me, something hissed, a wet, broken imitation of my breath. I kicked the hatch open and rolled out. A wave slammed me sideways, tumbling me into freezing water. I clawed at the rocks, fingers numb, and hauled myself out as the tide dragged at my boots. The pier groaned above, an old titan finally ready to give. I lay there until the storm eased enough for me to stumble home. Morning brought cordons. Fairburn stood by the barricades, pale as driftwood. Inspectors muttered about structural failure and demolition schedules. "You didn't see anything down there?" he asked. "No," I lied, "but Ellie needs to keep away from this place." He nodded. "Everyone does." I thought it might end there. It should have. But that night, just as I was peeling off my damp socks and settling into the armchair, I heard it. 3 knocks, measured, patient, tap, 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 right at the front door. I went still. The house was silent otherwise, settling timbers, faint hum of the boiler. Nothing that could explain those knocks. I stood slowly and walked to the entrance, opened the door. Empty street, windless night. But on the mat was a single wet footprint, small. Clearly smaller than mine. Unmistakably tiny compared to my own earlier footprints near the pier. Salt water glistening around the edges, and I knew, clear as the waters beneath the pier, that I'd brought something home with me.